Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me this morning. We're going to be talking about the Northwest Evaluation Association and the measures of academic progress, which we call the MAP test. My name is Sarah Toa, and I'm the Associate Director of Learning here at the American School of Dubai. Our Office of Learning does a lot of things. We talk about continuous learning with teachers and children. We look at best practices, curriculum alignment, assessment and instruction, and then we also support our faculty and staff in their professional learning and growth as well. So we do a lot of things to align curriculum and assessments across the school. I am joined in this office by Glenn Carlson, who is our Director of Learning, and we also have Sharon McCartan, who is our data manager, and then Jinsey Abraham, who is our office coordinator, and that makes up our Office of Learning. And I'd just like to thank you for taking time today to come out and join us. So I'm working two screens here, so we're just working on that. So today we're going to be using both the chat and the question box. So if you just make sure that you've got those. If you have any questions, just post them throughout and put them in that little question box, and I'll try and look at those. When I think about it, we've got a lot of content today. So I think a lot of your questions will be asked as we go through. But if there are any at the end that I think aren't answered, then we can look at those toward the end as well. So I won't stop and take questions throughout. I'll mostly look at those at the end. And the Q&A, the chat box, we're going to be using a little bit at the beginning just to see who's here today. And then at the end, we'll come back to that as well, just to do a little checkout as well. So I like to always start with our mission. This is in the forefront of our mind. We're going to do a little activity with this as well, just to think about what's important for us. And this is our aim of our whole school. So it's really important to hold this as our North Star as we move forward into our work today and into our work always as well. Just before we begin, let's think about who's here today. So I just want to get a feel for who's out there. I can't see people, so I'm hoping that some people are out there. So in the chat box, when you get a chance, just say who your child, and if you're returning or not. So if you're third grade, you'll be new to this MAP test. But if your child's older, you might have done it before. So just your child's grade, and I see that somebody's already done that, grade 3, and then returning or new family. And you can look at the chat box to see who's here too. Perfect. So you can look through there and see who's in our chat, in our Zoom room today. And there's quite a few of you, lots of returning parents and quite a few new parents as well. I see new grade 8, third grade parents. We've got a grade 2 parent. So that means that they're looking ahead and thinking about what MAP is. So welcome everyone. For us today, I'm just thinking about who's joining us. And so you might, if you were here last year and saw this, or if you looked on the Go page where this will be posted afterwards, you might have seen quite a bit of this already. So it might be a refresher for you. If you're new to our school or new to MAP or new to third grade, this might be new content for you. So we will move quite quickly. If you have questions, you can always contact me afterwards. My email will be at the end of the screen, or contact our office. Chat can only be seen by panelists. So let me see if I change that. We've got a lot, sorry, thank you for that person that said that. I think it was Jean. So we're thinking about today, just understanding, I'm going to give a general understanding about what MAP is. Then we'll talk about the student progress and the growth reports and what that looks like, how we use those and what they mean for you, and benefits of standardized testing. And we're also going to move a little bit into what teachers do with this and what parents can do and how we can help support our children as we move forward into the MAP testing. We're going to think about also just the costs that this takes for our school, and it does cost us money to do the MAP testing, and it costs quite a bit of time, especially this year. We've spent a lot of time doing MAP testing because it's been much harder to socially distance all the children. The biggest cost that we often see is the tendency for some parents to put so much emphasis on this one test, and it's one moment in time. So from this very first slide here today, I just want you to be thinking about how this is part of our assessment, and that we're not defining our children by that paper that you've got beside you right now, or those test results that you've got beside you by now. We're not talking about today individual student map things. The best person, if you have individual things, questions about your map testing or your map results, the best person to see is your child's teacher. Go and see them, have a chat with them and have a talk with them, because they know your child. After you, they know your child best. And so go and have a chat with them and see what they can talk to you about. And I can also assure you, if your child's been here for the last 2 months, they have grown and they have progressed and they have learned, and they come to school every day, or they come to school virtually every day, and they're learning and growing every day. So we know there's going to be definite growth. So we're going to start with a check-in today, and I looked up the MAP mission, and the mission is very short. It's partnering to help all kids learn. And I just added that second part that you can read. So that's the MAP mission. And so what I thought we might do today is think about as our check-in, just to get everyone into the room. Here's our ASD mission underneath, and you're probably very familiar with that. So what I want you to do is think about what you hold important with our ASD mission. And we're going to be looking for commonalities between the NWEA MAP mission and our ASD mission, and really about what we value. Our mission is about what we strongly value and why we're here, and why we're here for our students and for our children. So think about the ASD mission. I just want you to have a 30-second think time about a word or a phrase that's standing out for you in our ASD mission. When you've got that word or that short phrase in your head from our ASD mission, go ahead and put that in the chat box. And this is what we're going to be holding on to today as we move forward. And we're going to also see what, how we're common with other people in the room, and then what other people are thinking as well. A passionate learner, inspire, passion, prepared to adapt in a rapidly changing world, challenge and dream, contribute, adaptability, Thank you. It's so good to look at our mission and just revisit it often, and just think about our reason why we're here. So that's what we've done today. We're thinking about our mission. So let's begin. We're going to start with, okay, I've got some questions. Yes, we're going to go through that. Thank you for that question. We're going to be talking about the big map overview. We're going to start with the big picture. So at American School of Dubai, we do map from grades 3 to 8. Some schools do it from 2 to 9, or other grades as well. We have decided not to do it in grade 9 because our students were often topping out of the test and it wasn't giving us results. So we stopped the map testing at grade 8. We do the math and the reading, the science and the math, reading and science. And we do it 2 times a year. We do it in the fall and in the spring. And we don't do it other than that. We feel like we get a good overview and that we can show growth and we can show attainment over those 2 times per year. We also have, what else? Oh, it's not a timed test. So that's something interesting about this. The students can take as much time as they want. We don't want them to take a huge amount of time, and we can see if they're rapid guessing, if they're taking a very short amount of time. So the timing is important, but we don't stop them at an hour and say, right, you're done. We do give extra time if they need it. So it's a test where they can just take their time as well. Adaptive. This means we'll talk more about how it's adaptive, but the tests aren't a one size fits all. They're not all the same. It starts off and moves as the child answers the questions. And so that will come more later on as well. Another thing that the test is it shows the students' growth and achievement, and you'll be seeing that on your report as well. So we'll go into how MAP shows, it measures the achievement of each child against the Common Core standards, but it also shows projected growth. And so the projected growth, it gives us growth over time, but it also gives projected growth. So it can estimate what the growth might look like with children as well. So that's really the big overview of MAP, of what it is. When we look at the MAP testing, we look at it as a one shot. So if you go into an art gallery, you see these pictures and these paintings that have been painted over time. Sometimes they take years to do a painting. MAP isn't like that. MAP is just one part of that painting. And it's the same like a family photo album. You'll see one picture as you go through, but that picture doesn't represent over time, and it doesn't represent a full picture. So the map gives us a really good insight into one moment in time, and over time it gives us a good insight into growth. But a single map result doesn't show us a huge picture. It gives us a picture of how we are at that moment. So I've added in a picture of my puppy. This is Rocket, and so this is an example of a map test, because at the moment the snapshot shows Rocket, my dog, sleeping, and he looks like an angel. This is my dog at the moment, but he is not like that all of the time. His name really says about who he is. He is like a little rocket, and he runs around and barks and jumps, and so so this is like MAP. It gives us one moment in time of what he is like. So that's the same. We have the MAP partner schools. When we look at the body of research around the MAP testing, 8 million students, we are normed against 8 million students in the US that take this test. So there's a huge body of work, and they update probably every 5 years their norms, and they've just updated them in 2020. Last year we were looking at 2015, but they updated them in 2020, and they do that because they take so much research and so much time. They don't update every year because that's not how it's done. They take norms over time. So we're being normed against millions of students in the US and over a body of time. We're also, and a variety of schools take it in the US, the public schools, foundations, independent schools, private schools. And then on the other hand, we've got the US State Department schools, US and overseas, and we're one of those schools that's supported by the US government. The other thing is that KHD requires, the DSIB and the KHDA, our local education ministry, requires all US curriculum schools to use MAP. So we do use it, and they see our results as well. So that's another reason we use it. We do it, and we use it for us as well as giving the results to KHDA as well. So this is how adaptive tests work, and this is how the MAP works. So what we're doing is trying to find the students' pace, and there are about 50 questions, give or take a couple of questions, and the questions are designed to be half right and half wrong. The students don't know which are right, so it doesn't flash up and say wrong, right, or a big X or anything. They just answer a question and it moves on to the next question. And the questions are all multiple choice. So the child will start off with a question. If that question was if it was a correct answer, it'll move to something harder. And if that question is correctly answered, it will move to something harder. If that question is answered incorrectly, it'll move down and easier and up again. So the questions move up and down until the gap closes, and we really find an area, a group of areas where the student is about getting those answers correct. Sometimes for our kids at ASD, they like to get things correct, and they can sometimes find it frustrating to get things wrong. So when they see a question that they don't know the answer to, sometimes they can take quite a while to answer those questions. And we can't avoid it. They know the students know that they're going to get half of these questions wrong and right. There's no way to answer all the questions correctly. This isn't like a summative assessment where they've learned all the content and then we're making sure that they've learned it all so we can move on to something else. What this MAP test does, it gives us a roadmap of where to know, how to know where to teach the students, and it gives us really good areas of growth. The MAP test, yes, it's taken all the same all over the world, not at the same time. We get given a window, and so it's not the same time because there are also winter tests as well in different times. But what we are required to do is, we'll talk more about this a little bit, is show how much time the students have had before the test and after. So it's the normed, yeah, that's an interesting question about the norming. So when we do the tests, we get an equal, the students come out as an equal interval RASH unit. A RASH unit is a rich scale, and it's like physical growth. We've got all students that are on a scale, and they move up the scale every year and up and down, and we look for anomalies in this. There might be outliers. There might be a student that last year scored high and moved down low, or students that move around. So we have it on an equal interview growth chart up the side, because we know that a student isn't going to get an exact score of 217. If they get a score of 217, we know that that's within a range. So the score becomes within that range. And so we say if they get 217, we know that there could be an error of points on each side. And these are the RIT scores based on the US scores of the same grade level and the same RIT scores. So those are that's how we measure those. And it's kind of like a growth chart. So when we have children growing, we measure their chart. I had one of these in my baby book for both my daughters. And I would notice they could measure, they could tell typical growth about my daughter, and they could say how tall they thought she was going to be when she got older based on where she started and how she was growing. And there was some times where and she's now taller than me, so she's exceeded what they thought. But also when you measure your kids, like in the MAP test, they don't go up the same intervals every year. If you're measuring your kids against a wall, you'll use the equal measurements of an inch or a centimetre, but sometimes they might grow half a centimetre over 6 months, half a centimetre, a little bit, and other times there'll be a growth spurt where they just grow 2 inches in 6 months. And so you can't, that's just them and the way that they grow in their development. So that's the same as MAPs. Sometimes they have growth spurts where they grow big chunks, and sometimes it's a little bit slower. The other thing is when they're born, sometimes they go down and up. It doesn't always go up. What else? The other thing is that when they're younger, they grow faster. And so often you'll see a lot of growth in the students when they start off in the MAP testing. They do big jumps in the MAP testing in 3rd and 4th grade. When it comes to the older grades, they slow down in their growth. But it's like me, I'm still growing and learning. I'm still learning all the time. My growth isn't as fast as the pre-K classrooms that I went into yesterday, where I could see the students learning and growing huge amounts. So we know that growth also is dependent on their age and their development as well. We've got some terminology here, some things about that comes out in the math. We talk about norms, and these are the norms compared to those other 8 million students in the US who take MAP across the year, and they norm them according to when they take it and what grade they are and their age. Even if they're grade 2, they look at what age they are in grade 2, how long they've been in school. So a norm in the middle of the year, it depends on how long they've been in school. So all of those norms are what we compare ourselves to over that huge body of research in the US. A proficiency is compared to a criteria, and the criteria that MAP uses is the Common Core, which of course is what we use. So when we're saying how they measure up, it's to points that they've made about in the Common Core curriculum. Growth, this is an estimate, and I actually this is an estimate of growth. So it means that they can see how kids learn in the US, and then also typical growth. So they're looking at typical growth. That doesn't mean that our students are going to grow like that. Of course, like the unit that we saw before, it could be more and it could be less. So that's a typical growth that we're looking at. The percentile is different from percentage. So a percentage is out of 100, and if you get 75%, you get 75 out of 100. A percentile is different because if you're in the 75th percentile, it means out of all the students, out of all that range, you are 75% better than all the other kids in the norm. So that's what this percentile means. It doesn't mean where you are in the test. It means compared to the norm, where you are in that population within the norm group. So percentile is a little bit different as well. I'm getting ahead of myself. Oh, so at the American School of Dubai, we're looking at all the things that we teach. We teach a huge range of things to our students, as you know. We've got within mathematics, language arts, and science, we have a lot of standards or a lot of areas that we teach into. And within these areas, there are a huge amount of learning going on. So within writing, we don't just teach writing, we teach writing in narrative, and we teach writing in persuasive or opinion writing. And then we also teach writing grammar, and we teach how to spell words, or we teach how to make strong conclusions and strong beginnings. So we have a huge holistic view of what we teach. In over 180 days of learning, we get this rich body of teaching for our students. When we look at MAP, this is what MAP measures. MAP can't measure everything, so it measures these three things. And even within reading, it measures some things in reading. In reading, we ask our kids to turn and talk about text and think deeply about text. That can be hard to measure in MAP. So MAP measures these three things within our curriculum. So when we think about MAP, it's valuable information and it's a part of what we can see. So when we're looking at MAP, when the teachers look at MAP, when we look at MAP as a parent or as teachers, we think of it as a snapshot. It gives us good information, and we have that 2 times a year. But teachers also triangulate their data. They use a lot of data to get information about a student, and we assess more than just their reading skills. We assess aligned with our Common Core. The teachers are always observing students. They're always looking at their social and learner development habits as well. And sometimes the teachers might say, I see on the map, it talks about this item that the kids have to learn, but we don't teach this till later in the year. So the map measures some things that we know are coming up later on that we will teach our students when we differentiate with our teaching as well. We have so many different sort of assessments in the classroom that complement the map. So we have our formative and summative to find out what the students are knowing, and then if they know it afterwards, the observations, and then students do their self-reflections, and we look at student work as well. So those are a lot of things that we look at in conjunction with the map as well. And then this is what you see is how teachers might use the map. And this is one of the lines from we have an assessment practice book that we look at. And this is what we believe, that the student is the first and most important user of assessment data. So assessment is for students. That's what we want, is to move our students forward. So teachers might sit alongside a student and look at their MAP scores and say, what do you notice that you did well? Where might we improve, and how might we improve on that? They might sit down and look at MAP overall and say, here's an area where we think our students need boosting up. And so how might we plan to implement more into that, and how might we assess that they're actually learning it? And finally, in our teaching and learning, the teachers actually plan for the teaching and learning that goes into it to help complement the Common Core which also helps complement the math. So there are many ways that teachers are using this map data along with other data as well. So now it's time for, and if you have questions, just keep on putting them in the question panel and I can keep on seeing those as well. Please get out your student progress report, or just make sure you have access to that student progress report. Last year I had a picture of a clipboard here, and I liked this picture better, of just the students looking and studying, and just how we are with our kids. They're looking and studying that progress report. So you're going to get, in your student progress report, there are different views that you're going to get. So I can talk about the different views that you might see. If you're a new third grade parent, all third graders will get this view. So this is the same as all the other views. It's just a little easier to read. And I'm going to go through, if you can see, I don't know if you can see my arrow, but all the writing down the bottom underneath the bar graph, all that writing is the same as this little writing in the text box. So we're going to go through and look at all of those things and see what they mean. The next view is for all other students in every other grade that is new. So if you're new in 4th, 5th, 8th grade, this is what you'll see. And sometimes this is a little hard to read. So if you are a new parent, this is from 7th grade, a new parent. If you're a new parent and you would prefer to have this view, please email me and we can get that out to you. Sharon McCartan will be, or you can email Sharon directly if you know her email address. So she can get this out to you if you're new and you're not in 3rd grade, if you feel like this is easier for you to see. This one is what you'll get if you're not new. So sometimes it's hard because those two little dots there can be very close together or overlapping. And you can't see any colors yet. You can't see the orange or the yellow down the bottom as well. And this is what you'll get if you are a returning student. So you can see all the three, you can see the information there, and you can see also the graph, and down the bottom, and that box, there's doubled up on information. So we're going to go through those sections of the report, and you'll get one of these graphs on math, you'll get one of these graphs on science, and you'll get one on reading as well. So we're going to go first to that little box to the right, and we're going to think about, and there's a little box down the bottom as well, we're going to think about how to interpret this and what all these numbers mean. And I already had a parent that made me giggle because she wrote to me and said, I saw the numbers and I freaked out because I thought my child was failing. And then she made contact with another parent who said, no, calm down. It's that's not what your child's score is. That's quite different. So we're going to be talking about all the different parts of this and how to really understand it. First of all is that RIT range. And so the range that you've got, your child might get, and I'm also looking at, down the side is the FASP. That means fall and spring. So yours should say fall 20, which is for this year. I'm just looking at one that I've used a couple of times over. So you'll notice that the range, you have your students range, but we talk about the RIT range because what happens is that means that if your child tested again within 10 days of this test, they would probably get within that range. And it says 60% probability that they would still be in there. They might be further up or further down. So that's why we know that this test, it can move up and down, but that's about where your child would be if they tested again. If you notice on this report that the RIT gets higher over time, so it just moves up. You can see it moves up, but there are a couple of times, like you can see from spring 2000, on spring 2014 to fall 2014, it actually went down 1 point. And so sometimes it does go down, and we don't know why that is. It depends on the testing of the day. It depends on whether the child ate breakfast or how they came in or where they were sitting in the room. So it's really important not to look at one single score, but we're really wanting to look at growth over time. Another thing that I've noticed in here, in spring 2016 to fall 2016, the score stayed the same. So it didn't mean that child was flatlining. It just means that they were moving up as they went as well. And they actually went down a little bit again and then have gone up. So it really is, we're wanting to look at that body of research. It's like that photo album. We're wanting to look at it over time. The next part is the growth prediction. And this is a projection. We have a lot of notes about this. So you'll see the actual projected growth in the spring. So we only get that in the spring. The growth projection is based on the norms and the typical growth. So it's actually not expected growth, it's growth prediction. With that growth, if it says the growth projection is 14 points, half of the students against our norms will get more than that, and half will actually get less. So with that projected growth, it really doesn't mean if your child doesn't meet that growth that they failed. It just means that they're in that mix of students. And that's just a starting place. The projected growth is a starting place to help us set targets and to use set growth targets, which could be higher or lower. So we're always balancing that with other information as well. I've got about how the NWEA norms the study, so I'm going to just make sure I get this right. They include quite a few factors to look at that growth prediction. They look at, so I had a question about this, about the map being same time over the world. They look at how many weeks instruction that the students have received on average before testing. And they set that as a preference for our school or district. And our district, of course, is ASD. They looked at how high the student scored on the first term, because it's unlikely for a student to start with a high score to grow as much. So if there's zero growth, it means that according to their norms, that they might not be projected to grow anymore at the moment. They might be at the top, and you might not see growth, or you might see negative growth, because they're at, according to their norms, they might not be able to grow, or they might not, that's not what I want, they might not have more growth projected. It's common for students to have the same growth projection over time, despite having different MAP scores, because it really is about, again, how long they've been in school against the norms as well. And keep in mind that this is a projection. And the higher up they go, the less you'll see the growth prediction gets less and less as the student gets older and older. They had 14 growth prediction and then 12, and you can see that they actually got less, but they actually did grow quite a bit in that spring of 2018 as well. So that we're really just thinking about, great question. So the growth projection, so somebody said if my child was 200, then 200 plus would be growth prediction. So the growth prediction you can see here on spring 2017, they measured at 229, that was their RIP score. So according to how long that child had been in school, according to all the US norms, according to the age of that child at the time and the grade of that child and how much they'd grown before, they're expected to grow about 6 points. A typical child in that range would be expected to grow 6 points. And so we can see that they didn't meet their growth prediction. They actually went down 2, but that's what a typical child would be, is the growth prediction was 6. So if a typical child would have gone to 235. So that's not what happened there. But also remembering that half of the children don't meet their growth projection. It's really just the projection, and it's just measured against the norms. What we do as a school is we do look at the growth projection, but we don't look at individual children. We look at over the body of our school. And so we study these data and we look at it and say, are our students as a whole growing? And typically, yes, they are. We share with KHDA every year how our students grow, and we grow all the time. So that's something that we do, that we are aware of, and we look at it over the school. I'm just looking at. So the percentiles and highest percentile, I'm not sure, once they top out of the test, that's why we don't teach into, we don't test into 9th grade, because they top out. So once they top out, we know that we're teaching other things as well, and we can triangulate that data as well. And the district grade level, the RIT compared to, our RIT is compared to US norms. The RIT is always compared to US norms. Our district level, if you're looking at the graph, we'll come to that later, is compared to, our district is ASD. When we're looking at the RIT growth, we're expecting to see those scores grow over time. And of course, they may decline, like we talked about before. This is not cause for concern. Like adults, kids have good days and bad days, and this is just on this day, this is how they tested. So we really want to be making sure that we look at growth over time. Students who test above grade level, typically they often show less growth. So, and a lot of our students do test above grade level, so sometimes they don't. Individual students show a little bit less growth. Sometimes this number can feel like an exact number, but remember it's research-based and it's an estimate. It is not an exact science, it's not an exact number. This is just against those 8 million students who were normed against in the US as well. District is students in the same grade, yes. So when we're looking at the percentile range, of course, this is, remember we talked about how this is different from percentage. So this student measured in fall of 2018 in the 78th percentile. That means that he or she, the student, was within the 73 to 82 percentile range, above all students that in this norm group. So it also means that there are 22% of students that exceeded this student in that norm group as well. Right, I think that's it. And really it talks about, oops, I went back there. Yeah, so we're talking about the percentile range and the norm group, isn't it? Oh, so next one down here. So on your page, you've also got this little key, and it breaks the math or the science or the math and the science and reading into different areas. And it will tell you about where their strengths, and it will tell you the places where we want to teach into and to grow as well. So it compares to other students who have taken that MAP test. So again, it's comparing to our norms. It's really common for our students to be lower or higher than average. That's very, very common. And it doesn't necessarily mean, if you see low average or a lower score, that doesn't mean that they are failing a course. It might just mean that they're having difficulty, or they find that if they're high, it might mean that if they find that particular content easy, or they might be having a difficult time with that material and that content. It doesn't mean they're failing, because we look at this over time and over a lot of our assessments as well. So there are a lot of factors that go into this. If you're finding that it's going down, or that you are concerned, definitely go and talk to your teacher about it. And your teacher has information about this as well. We do watch this. If we saw a growth projection not growing at all or going down, we would be definitely looking into that child as well. And we would be as concerned as you. We would be wanting to see growth over time. So if we're not, we definitely have a look at the growth over time. So the scaling in that is high, average, low average, and low. If you look at the NWEA site, they'll tell you where those go into. I can't remember which norms they go into, but they go into the RIT scale. So there are the different areas in the RIT scale that they go into. if you have a look at your graph, if you're a returning parent, and if you're a parent from a fourth grade onwards, you'll have these colors down the bottom. And it can be difficult to see because you'll just have a dot and they might not project the growth projection, but you'll see the orange is our school. Our district is ASD, and the norm grade level is those 8 million students in the US. So that's what we look at when we're looking at the growth and the scores. And you can notice that the student is the blue. You can see that they in the spring to the fall they went down. You can see dips and growth, and this is a very typical graph. Sometimes they might go under and over those different projections, but this is just very typical. And sometimes they might be high above the ASD norms as well. So it's very, very normal to see. If you see, oops, I went past two. When you see low scores or negative growth, don't panic. I am a parent and I've definitely seen low scores and negative growth in my students, and they're still in school and they're still thriving. It might be about the time spent on the test. Sometimes students rapid guess on a test and they just get in there and panic and start rapid guessing, which is good because now part of the test means if the test sees if a student is rapid guessing, it will put a sloth on the screen and ask the student to slow down. And then the teacher will see that as well and just go over and make sure. And we can see how timed they are. So students, and it might be that a student spent hours on a test, which also we don't want. We want to make sure that they don't stress over everything too much. They just try their best and move on. It might be about breakfast or how they slept last night, or whether they found their shoes on the way to school. So all of these things can change the test on that day. It might be if they were away, how many assessments they took on that day. They might have taken a math and a reading if they were absent the day before. So they might be test fatigued. So that might be something that factors into their growth as well. If they're already at a high level of achievement, sometimes you do see it go down because it's harder to grow when you're at a high level. It's harder to make those growth jumps from when you first start in as well. And the other thing is if you feel like your students' needs aren't getting met, talk to your teacher if you're worried or concerned, and they will tell you, they'll be able to say, yes, this map aligns with what I'm seeing in the classroom, let's talk about this, or this map was one day, but here's all my data that shows that this student is thriving in the classroom and doing really well, and at the moment there is no cause for concern. So really think about think about the growth. I've just had a parent, if you can put questions and answers on the Q&A, that's easier for me because I'm following that rather than the chat. A parent has just asked on the chat, may I look at the map result with the subject teacher at parent-teacher meeting? Absolutely. Talk about that. And if you've got concern, talk about it with your parent, teacher and student, because this data is for students as well. So look about it and say what you see or where the strengths lie and how you might move forward. Definitely you can talk to the teachers about it. And we're looking for patterns in growth. So if you're seeing patterns over time that's negative, do talk to your teachers and tell them your concerns and see what they can share. As a school and a division, we look at this body of data. And so we're wanting to see that students are in growth. So we're wanting to see that mostly they're in that top right quadrant or the left quadrant, and we notice kids that aren't growing. We have some here that are high achieving and not growing. But what we really want to do is be looking at students that are attaining their levels against the Common Core, but also that we can see that students are mostly growing. And that's what we want to see is growth. And teachers, administrators, the counsellors, we all access the different reports to think about how to inform our instructional practices and our support of students. Okay, I've got some great questions here. We're coming up to the international norms. We'll talk about that as well. Class level is the next thing. So the teachers also see this. They see a range of class level. They'll see where the students have grown. They can access all this information. They can look across this and see where their group norms are. They can see students that grew down the side here, students that didn't reach their growth, that went down in growth, and students that are going up. And they're looking, teachers are looking for patterns over time. They're also looking to see if this report or these reports that they can see match what they're seeing in the classroom. So this is another data point for them to say, I'm concerned about this child in this area, and the map also tells me this, or I'm not concerned at all and this map doesn't line up, so there's something going on here that I don't understand. The teachers also see a learning continuum. I'm not sure if this is on the map. So this shows you, we don't get this for individual students, we get this for a RIT. So if a student's meeting this RIT range, this is a student in the 204 RIT range. So these things in math, they can do half of these things, and half of these things they can't. In the RIT range before, it says that that they can do most of those things, and the RIT range after are the things that they're learning into. So this is a RIT range where we're saying this is about where the students are, and these are the things that we're teaching the students now. So this is another teacher view that we can see. Somebody asked about how we compare to other schools. Our district is ASD, but we also do compare to our NWEA group. So we've got here the world average. This is something that we as a school look at as well, where we sit. So we've got the norms in the grey down there. We've got our group average, which is our NWEA group. So we're looking at schools in our Near East region, which are schools in Bahrain, Doha, other schools within Dubai, Turkey, schools in our region, and how they compare, and we can see their average, and then we can see where our school lies with that as well. So there are some interesting data there. Oh, it looks like I might have repeated one. So we do compare ourselves to other schools as well. The percentile range compares to the norm. So we compared mostly to the norm. And it's a measure to all the students in the norm in that 8 million group as well. So we're coming to the end. This is about what parents can do. So I've talked about this so many times, and I think if there's one thing to take away, it is don't put too much on one decision, on one test score. What you do want to do is understand where MAP fits into our ecosystem of our school. We use these data. We don't put everything on it. It doesn't make huge decisions for our students. We use it as one point, just like you as a parent want to see that growth, and you use it as one point and can talk to your students, to your child about this. We want to compare this MAP data to other schoolwork and we want to look for similarities and differences and see where those lie. And then we can set goals with ASD. You want to talk to your teacher about these and think about what are the goals we want to set. And your teacher will already be looking at other assessments as well to think about, how do I move this student forward? It's all we think about is student growth. And you also want to look at that other work as well. And if you're concerned, ask the teacher if this is consistent with what they're seeing in the classroom. Ask if they see anything that's unusual, or if this is just a test that was different on that day. And we want to view testing as just another opportunity to help the students grow. So we use this as a growth tool. We want to make sure we can see what they've learned and how they're learning in school. Do talk about your students with the test and be matter of fact. You don't need to be emotional, just be matter of fact and just understand what it's about. And so we've already had the test, so you can talk about any of these things with the student and just think about and get them to think about what they're doing well and where they might want to grow and how they might want to move forward as well. So that really comes to the end. I'm going to look at the questions now. A Lexile range in reading. Oh, so yes, it can talk about Lexile range. Lexile is actually a measurement of the words in a text and how difficult they are. So a Lexile range doesn't talk about thinking of a text or text complexity. It talks about measurement of a text. So we can use Lexile range to help students choose a text to read within their Lexile. We have to be very careful because Lexile doesn't measure content. So you can get something like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which is a very popular 4th grade student text. And because of the words in that text, it has a higher Lexile than To Kill a Mockingbird, which has easy words but very, very deep comprehension. So Lexile we use to think about students reading, but also teachers use that to think about what other types of text and text complexity do we want to give students in their reading as well. District grade level and norm grade, we've talked about that. I have so I do have a question about just a person's writ. So you can either email me, but the best person to ask about your child and their range is your teacher. The writ changes with that body of work, and the writ depends on where the students measure against the other students within that range as well. So the writ is not dependent on grade level. The writ is dependent on it uses grade level, but it also uses age. It uses how long they've been in school. It uses how they tested before as well. So there's a lot of things that go into it. The norm is based on on all 8 million students that took the test in the US. So it's over all of those students. I've got a question about gifted kids programs. We don't have a gifted or enrichment program. We have a lot of differentiation within our school, and we have students who do have support from their teacher, and we have people that come in and talk about that as well. In the classroom, we do have extra teachers in the classroom, and we teach students in small groups. We have class teaching, we have small group teaching, we have individual teaching. So it's not, you won't see teachers standing up in front of the class talking to students all of the time. Most of the time it's, here's something that we can learn together, and then working with the child one-on-one or within small groups at their ability level to move them up. And that's showing to be proven practice about how to move students within their grade level and within their learning. We don't have a one-size-fits-all model at the American School of Dubai. And so we've moved away from that a long time ago. The district level data is so that our district level data is ASD, the growth shows over time. Our norms are from the last 5 years of work. So the ASD, the US norms are from 2015 to 2020 as well. Highest percentile is 100. So 100 percentile means that you are at the top, and it still is within a range. You'd be at the top. That means that you are in the top of that range, yes. So I'm hoping if I haven't answered your question, you might just want to pop it in the question and answer again, because I might have, I didn't type that I answered the questions. Here's the last thing that I'd like you to do just before we sign off as well. And this is just thinking about learning through this webinar today. I know some of you have heard this before. For some of you, this is new content. So this is just a checkout activity, and I will also have access to this. So it will give me feedback on what I might talk about differently. So in the chat, this might be anything that you're still wondering about. It might be something positive, and the students do this as well. What's something that you learned, or now that you know that you didn't know before, or that you just thought was interesting, and also something that you would like more information about, or that you are going to try, or just something that is a wish for you and your child. If you do have extra questions that you really feel like are burning, and they're about teaching and learning and about the MAP assessment in general, please email me. My email is down the bottom there. And if you have concerns or want to know more about your child's MAP testing, please go and see your teachers. And they have that great knowledge of your student and all the assessments they've been doing all throughout this year as well. So when you're ready, just pop those 2 stars and a wish into the chat. I'll just keep talking about the questions and answers as well. Why did the ASD international comparison numbers fall in 2020? So we don't decide on when the US norms are done. The US, the MAP testing does that, and they did it in 2015, and then they updated the norms in 2020. So when we do our MAP testing, it's against the US norms that they do in 2020. So it just means that they were updated. So using all the research that they've done over the last few years, they've just made sure that they still align with what they're seeing and the growth that they're seeing in those projections. So any other questions? I appreciate you being here today. In the chat, you can just add in anything that you have 2 stars and a wish. And thank you so much for being here. Keep the questions coming. I'll stay on for a little bit and just read any more questions. Oh, it's 9:30. We're exactly on time. So thank you. District is ASD, norm is the US. Correct. Correlation between science and math scores. Our science and math curriculum, when we're looking at the Common Core, there are commonalities between the Common Core. I don't know about the science and math scores. No, they're 2 different tests, so that there would be no correlation between the 2 tests of math. But we definitely have correlation between some of the standards that align with each other in science and math. Thank you, everyone. Pop in sometime and say hi.